The ferry from Kagoshima takes 4 hours. As Yakushima comes into view, it rises out of the sea as a single mass of dark green, its peaks hidden in cloud. The island looks as though it grew here before the rest of Japan, before the mainland found its shape, before the cities came. There is no gradual approach. One moment you are at sea, the next, the forest is before you. The air changes first. It carries moisture and the smell of living wood, something between pine and earth and rain. The deer are sometimes visible from the dock, standing at the edge of the tree line, watching the boat arrive with no particular interest. They have been here longer than anyone who might come to find them. Yakushima sits at the meeting point of 2 climate systems, subtropical and temperate, and neither one wins. The island is roughly circular, about 500 square kilometers, and its center rises to nearly 2,000 meters. The highest peak, Miyanoura Daka, is the tallest point in southern Japan. The geology is ancient granite, pushed upward from the seafloor over millions of years. Because the island is so high and sits in the path of moisture-laden currents from the Pacific, it collects rainfall in extraordinary quantities. In the mountains at the center, the annual rainfall can reach 10,000 millimeters, among the highest in Japan. That water never stops moving. It runs down every gully and crack in the granite, feeding rivers that reach the sea in under 10 kilometers. The island is always wet, always draining, always renewing. Altitude. Because the island rises so sharply from sea level to mountain peak, it contains several distinct ecosystems stacked vertically within a short horizontal distance. Near the coast, subtropical plants grow, ferns and palms and broad-leafed trees that would not survive winter further north. Moving upward, the vegetation shifts. Temperate species replace subtropical ones. Then the cedars begin. Then the alpine zone near the summit, where only grasses and low shrubs survive the wind and cold. You can walk through centuries of ecological transition in an afternoon hike. The island is, in this sense, a compressed version of a journey from the tropics to the subarctic. The scientists who study it treat Yakushima as a laboratory where the rules of vertical zonation can be observed in unusually small compass. There is a saying about Yakushima: it rains 35 days a month. The logic is impossible, but the feeling is accurate. Rain comes in every form, a fine mist that barely registers as precipitation, a steady, persistent drizzle, sudden, hard downpours that turn the paths into shallow rivers. The island's trails are engineered to cope with this. Stone steps allow water to run off without eroding the path. Wooden boardwalks cross the areas that flood. The hikers who come in summer carry waterproof gear regardless of the forecast. The locals do not carry umbrellas. They move through the rain the way one moves through air, as an ordinary condition of being outdoors on this island. The forests absorb the rain with complete silence. It enters the moss and the leaf litter and disappears. The rivers carry it seaward. The cycle runs without interruption. The moisture is the reason for everything. It is the reason the forest floor is entirely covered in moss. Thick, deep, almost luminous green that carpets the rocks and roots and fallen trunks. It is the reason the trees grow so large. It is the reason the air feels thick, almost dense with life. Walking through Yakushima's interior forest, you move through a space where the boundary between the living and the dead is unclear. A fallen cedar lies across the path, its wood slowly dissolving back into the soil. Ferns and new trees already growing from its rotting surface. The cedar feeds the forest even in dying. The moss on the ancient stones surrounding the trail is soft to the touch. It holds water like a sponge. Press your hand into it and moisture wells up. The forest is not just green, it is saturated. The cedars of Yakushima are a distinct variety, Cryptomeria japonica. But on this island, under these conditions, they grow differently than anywhere else. Elsewhere in Japan, the same species is planted in commercial forests, cut at 50 or 60 years. Here, the oldest trees have been growing for thousands of years. On Yakushima, a cedar over 1,000 years old is given the name Yakusugi, a compound of the island's name and the word for cedar. Younger trees, under 1,000 years, are called kosugi, small cedar. The distinction matters. A yakusugi is not just an old tree. It is a different category of object, something that has endured through a span of time that human memory cannot hold. To stand beside one is to stand beside something that was already old when the first written records of this island were made. In 1966, a forestry worker named Yutaka Shibata was surveying the upper reaches of the island when he encountered a cedar unlike anything he had seen. It stood in a steep, narrow valley, its trunk so wide that it would take more than 10 adults to encircle it with arms outstretched. The circumference at the base measured over 16 meters. Shibata reported the find. Scientists came. They estimated the tree's age and found they could not agree. The heartwood was too old to core reliably. The range of estimates ran from 2,170 years to 7,200 years. The tree was named Jomon Sugi, Jomon for the prehistoric period in Japan that ended around 300 BCE, Sugi meaning cedar. Even at the most conservative estimate, this tree was alive when the Roman Republic was still a republic. At the highest estimate, it predates the construction of the Egyptian pyramids. To reach Jomonsugi requires a full day on foot. The trail begins before dawn. You walk through a former logging railway corridor, then up through forest that grows denser and older as the elevation rises. After several hours, the other old cedars begin, trees with names, trees with markers. Each one is large, strange, individual. The ancient forest does not look like other forests. The trunks are massive and often irregular, shaped by centuries of wind damage and repair and renewed growth. Some have split and fused back together. Some grow in spirals. The bark is deep red and deeply furrowed. When you finally arrive at Jomonsugi, it is from a viewing platform, built to keep visitors from compacting the soil around the roots. You look at the tree from a distance. You understand standing there, that it does not need your presence to confirm its existence. The floor beneath the Yakusugi is not soil in the ordinary sense. It is an accumulation of millennia, decomposed cedar, moss, mineral-rich water, leaf fall from the canopy above. A Yakusugi does not simply grow in the ground. It grows in the residue of its predecessors, in the slow compost of earlier forests. Some of the oldest trees grow on top of large boulders, their roots draped over the rock surface like enormous fingers, reaching down to the soil below. This is called a stump sprout growth, a new tree that germinated on the elevated surface of a fallen ancient cedar, then grew downward as the original stump dissolved. The new tree and the old stump eventually merge into a single living form. On Yakushima, the generations of trees are not separate events. They are continuous. One life flows into the next across spans of time that human language is not built to measure. Industry historical. For most of recorded history, the great cedars of Yakushima were understood primarily as timber. The wood is exceptionally durable, dense and rich in natural oils that resist rot. During the Edo period, cedar tiles from Yakushima were used to roof the shrines and temples of the mainland. The islanders developed a technique for splitting the trees into thin tiles without felling them entirely, cutting sections of heartwood from living trunks, leaving the trees alive but deeply wounded. Some of these trees survived this process and are still alive today, their ancient scars still visible in the trunk. In the Meiji era, full-scale logging began. Roads were cut. A narrow-gauge railway was laid along the river valleys to carry logs to the coast. The forest contracted. Large sections of the ancient cedar zone were cleared. By the mid-20th century, the Yakusugi were being logged directly. Preservation. In the 1970s, the movement to stop logging on Yakushima gained strength. Scientists and conservationists made the case that the island's ecological value far exceeded the commercial value of its timber. The argument was not only environmental, it was economic. A living forest, if protected, could draw visitors and resorters for generations. A logged forest could be sold once. The case was made in government hearings. It was made in newspapers. It was made by the islanders themselves, some of whom had worked in the logging industry and now opposed it. In 1993, Yakushima was inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Logging in the ancient cedar zone effectively ended. The railway corridors became hiking trails. The logging road became a path for visitors to walk into the forest that the loggers had been cutting. The forest that remained began, slowly, to recover. About 13,000 people live on Yakushima. They are distributed among several coastal towns. Miyanoura in the north, Anbo on the east coast, Kurio in the south. The interior of the island is nearly uninhabited. The towns are small, practical, arranged around fishing harbours and local shops. Life here is oriented around the sea and the forest, the two industries that have always defined the island. The ferry schedule matters. The weather forecast matters. The fishing season matters. Younger islanders leave for the mainland in significant numbers. Those who stay often do so because they cannot imagine living without this particular relationship between the mountains and the ocean, the deer in the garden, and the rain on the cedar tiles. The island asks something of the people who live here. It asks a tolerance for moisture, for isolation, for the rhythms of a world that is not organized around convenience. Regeneration. In the areas where logging occurred, the forest is recovering, but slowly, on its own terms. The Yakusugi do not grow quickly. A cedar that is now 100 years old will not reach Yakusugi status for another 9 centuries. The logged areas are growing back as younger forest, dense, green, alive, but not yet ancient. The scientists who study the recovery track it in decades, not years. They note which species return first, which soil conditions favor cedar regeneration, how the moss communities establish themselves before the tree canopy closes. The recovery is real, but it is a different kind of forest than what was lost. What was lost was thousands of years of accumulation. What is growing back is a beginning. Whether the cedars that now stand as small trees in the regenerating forest will one day be given names, will one day draw pilgrims from the mainland, that is a question for a future that no one alive now will see. Wildlife. The Yakushima macaque is found nowhere else on Earth. Over thousands of years of island isolation, it has developed traits distinct from mainland Japanese macaques. A shorter tail, a heavier coat suited to the mountain cold. On Yakushima, troops move through the forest in loose columns, the older animals setting pace, the young ones trailing and doubling back to investigate things. They are not shy. They have been watching humans walk these paths for generations, and they have made their calculations. The troops are large, sometimes 40 or 50 animals, and they have territories that overlap with the hiking routes, the cedar groves, the river crossings. In the early morning, before the first hikers arrive, the macaques often come down to the lower trails to warm themselves in whatever light reaches the forest floor. They sit in the patches of sun like they own them, because they do. Close. Grooming occupies a significant portion of every macaque's day. It is not purely practical, not just the removal of parasites. It is the currency of alliance. A macaque that grooms well is a macaque with friends, and friends mean safety, priority at food sources, support in disputes. You can watch a troop for an hour and understand the social map of it entirely, through who sits with whom, who extends the invitation, who accepts, and who declines. The young males at the edge of the troop are the ones who groom most eagerly and receive least in return. They are building credit, establishing themselves, waiting. The older females at the center receive grooming from many directions. The hierarchy is not enforced by aggression most of the time. It is maintained quietly, through proximity and attention, through the small, persistent gestures of who makes room and who does not. Season. In autumn, the forest floor of Yakushima becomes a shared table. The cedars and oaks drop their seeds, and both the macaques and the cicadeer arrive to collect them. The macaques take what they want from the canopy first, and what falls is claimed by the deer below. It is a relationship of convenience, not cooperation exactly, but a pattern so reliable that the deer have learned to follow macaque troops through the forest. waiting for the harvest above to become the harvest below. The deer on Yakushima are smaller than mainland sika deer. Another island adaptation. The same pressure toward compactness that shaped the macaques. They move through the forest with very little noise, appearing and disappearing among the cedar roots. When the macaques move on, the deer linger, working over the ground with the patience of animals that have all day and nowhere else to be. The forest provides. It has always provided. That is what the island does. From May through August, the beaches of Yakushima's southern coast become nesting grounds for loggerhead sea turtles. The loggerhead has existed largely unchanged for more than 100 million years. It has outlasted the dinosaurs, the ice ages, the extinction events that remade the world several times over. Each summer it does what it has always done. It returns to the beach where it was born, hauls itself onto the sand in darkness, and digs. The females can weigh over 100 kilograms. Dragging that weight across the sand takes considerable effort. You can see the labor in how they move, pulling with their front flippers, pushing with the rear, leaving a track in the sand that looks like a small vehicle passed through. They choose the same stretch of beach across decades, returning to within meters of where they hatched. How they navigate back across thousands of kilometers of open ocean to a specific beach on a specific island is still not fully understood. Night patrol. The turtles come ashore only at night, and they are sensitive to light and noise. Yakushima's conservation teams maintain strict protocols during nesting season. No flashlights on the beach, no approach within several meters, no interference with the routes the females have chosen. The nesting process takes over an hour. The turtle excavates a chamber perhaps 60 centimeters deep, deposits around 100 eggs, then fills the chamber, compacts the sand with her body, and returns to the sea without looking back. She will nest several times in a single season, returning to the same beach every 2 weeks. Then she will not return for 2 or 3 years. The intervals are long enough that any individual turtle's presence on the beach is an event, something that has crossed an ocean to happen here, on this sand, in this darkness. The conservation teams count every nest. They have been counting since the 1970s, and the numbers have held. Conservation. When the eggs hatch, roughly 60 days later, the hatchlings emerge together, sometimes 100 small turtles pushing upward through the sand in unison. They surface at night if conditions are right, orient toward the sea by the horizon's brightness, and cross the beach in minutes. Of every 100 that hatch, perhaps 1 or 2 will survive to adulthood. The rest feed the ocean. This is not tragedy. It is the arithmetic of a species that has bet on abundance rather than protection. It has worked for 100 million years. The hatchlings that do survive will spend their first years in the open ocean, carried by currents, growing slowly. The females among them will return to this beach in 20 or 30 years, when they reach maturity, to the same stretch of sand drawn by something encoded before they were born. The beach will have changed. The island will look the same. Japan. Above the cedar zone, the forest thins. The trees become shorter and more gnarled, shaped by wind and ice into forms that no longer look like the cedars below. Above 1,600 meters, they give way entirely to alpine scrub, low plants that survive by staying close to the rock surface, out of the wind. The summit of Miyanoura Dake at 1936 meters is open ground. Granite outcroppings, the kind of terrain that belongs to no forest at all. From the summit on a clear day, you can see the southern tip of Kyushu to the north and the open Pacific to the south. The island appears small from up here, a circle of green floating on grey water. The cloud layer that usually covers the peaks moves below you, and you understand for a moment that the forest you have been walking through is actually inside the cloud, inside the rain, permanently. Beautiful. The cloud forest zone, between the cedar belt and the alpine summit, is a different world again. Here, moisture condenses directly from the cloud onto every surface. The trees are draped in hanging moss, epiphytes, plants that grow on other plants, drawing nutrients from the air and rain rather than the soil, cover the branches in dense layers. The light in the cloud forest is diffuse and grey, coming from no particular direction. The visibility is often only a few meters. Sounds are muffled. The sense of distance disappears. You walk through a space that seems to have no edges. Moss on every rock, cloud in every direction. The path underfoot the only certain thing. Animals move through this zone but rarely show themselves. The Yakushima macaque, a subspecies found only on this island, is sometimes heard before it is seen. A sharp call, then silence, then the movement of branches far above. Japan, the Yakushima macaque and the Yakushima sika deer have developed an unusual relationship. They are often seen together on the forest floor, the macaques foraging in the trees above, dropping fruit and seeds that the deer gather below. The deer, in turn, disturb the leaf litter as they move, exposing insects that the macaques sometimes take. Neither species seems disturbed by the other's presence. They occupy slightly different ecological roles and have apparently learned to exploit the overlap. Both are endemic subspecies, found nowhere else on Earth. Both are smaller than their mainland counterparts, an adaptation to the island's limited resources. To watch them together in the cedar forest is to watch an ecology that has organized itself over thousands of years without human management. Every relationship in this forest has been tested by time and found workable. The descent from the mountain in the late afternoon moves through changing light. The upper forest is in shadow first. The sun drops behind the western peaks, and the cloud forest goes grey immediately. Lower, in the cedar zone, the light lasts a little longer, falling in long horizontal bands through the canopy. The trunks of the old cedars glow briefly amber, then cool. The trail is quiet. Most hikers who came up in the morning are already down. A few latecomers move quickly, aware of the dark coming on. The deer that have been resting through the warmest part of the day begin to move again, appearing on the trail ahead, regarding the descending hikers for a moment, then stepping unhurriedly into the undergrowth. The forest settles. The sounds of water, always present, always audible, become more prominent as the human sounds diminish. Japan, Yakushima has trails that have been in use for centuries. Hunter paths, charcoal burner routes, forestry roads that predate the conservation era. The Shiratani Unsuikyo Ravine Trail follows a river through one of the most densely mossy forests on the island, the kind of landscape that appears in dreams. Every surface is green. The trail crosses the river on small wooden bridges, climbs alongside waterfalls, and arrives at a clearing where the oldest cedars in the lower forest stand. The path is maintained by volunteers and the island's forestry cooperative. In wet season, which is to say most of the year, sections of the trail run with water. You walk through streams. Your boots are wet within the first hour. This is expected. Waterproof gear is sold at every shop near the trailheads, and the island's tourism guides note matter-of-factly that if you are waiting for dry conditions, you will wait a long time. Departure. The trail to Jomonsugi begins at a trailhead that requires a bus ride taken before the sun rises. Most hikers start in darkness and reach the tree by mid-morning. The route covers about 10 kilometers each way, climbing steadily through changing forest zones. First, the subtropical growth near the valley, then the mixed forest, then the cedar belt where the largest trees are. The boardwalk sections near the summit were installed to protect the root systems of trees that have been growing since before the Roman Empire. The round trip takes 10 to 12 hours. Most people bring everything they need for the day: water, food, rain gear, emergency warmth, because the weather on Yakushima does not negotiate. The mountain makes its own. Hikers who have underestimated the distance or the altitude come back quieter than they left. The forest does not punish this. It simply does not adjust to accommodate it. Japan. There is a culture of care on Yakushima's trails. Hikers carry out everything they carry in. Mountain huts are maintained by the community and available to those who book early. On the trail to the summit, the convention is to yield to those descending on the narrow sections, not out of strict rule, but because it is understood that this forest requires patience. You do not rush through it. You let it pace you. The trail volunteers, older men and women mostly, who have been walking these routes for decades, do occasional work parties to clear drainage channels and repair bridges after typhoon season. They do this without fanfare. When you pass them on the trail, they nod and continue. The work is not performed for recognition. It is simply what you do when a forest has given you this much for this long. You maintain what maintains you. Cascade. Yakushima is home to Okonotaki, one of the largest waterfalls in Japan, accessible without mountaineering. The fall drops nearly 90 meters through a granite gorge, and the noise of it reaches you before you can see it. A steady thunder that grows until you round the last bend, and the full fall comes into view. The spray carries 200 meters. In summer, the pool at its base draws every creature in the surrounding forest. The sound alone, if you sit near it long enough, begins to feel like silence. This is a quality of very loud, continuous sound. It cancels the noise processing part of attention and leaves something quieter behind. The falls have been visited for centuries. There are records of hermit monks who lived near the sound of falling water on Yakushima, using the noise as a kind of permanent bell. The island provided the conditions. They simply stayed. Rain on a Yakusugi sounds different from rain on younger trees. The bark of an ancient cedar is thick and deeply furrowed. It absorbs the first drops, and the rain must saturate several centimeters of bark before it begins to run. When it does run, it follows the furrows down the trunk in dark lines. The sound is not a patter, but a slow gathering, rain arriving faster than the bark can absorb it. Water finding its way downward through the channels carved by centuries of previous rain. The moss at the base of the trunk is always wet, always soft. It takes each drop without sound. The water moves horizontally through the moss layer, then down into the soil, then into the root system, which extends invisibly in all directions. The tree is both destination and corridor. Water arrives, water passes through, water departs. This has been happening without interruption for thousands of years. Landscape. The rivers of Yakushima run fast and cold and clear. They carry the enormous rainfall down from the mountains to the sea, in channels cut through the granite. The water is the color of weak tea where it flows over submerged moss, and perfectly clear where it moves over bare rock. The sound of the rivers is constant in the forest, not always loud, but always present, a low, continuous sound beneath every other sound. The rivers have been cutting these channels for longer than the cedar forest has existed. The granite they flow over is far older than the cedars, older than the island's current ecology, older than almost anything that can be seen with the eye. The water itself is hours old, fallen from cloud to mountaintop, now moving to the sea. The channel it moves through is millions of years in the making. Time on Yakushima is not one thing. It is several scales of time operating simultaneously, without awareness of each other. Stillness. When the rain pauses on Yakushima, something unusual happens. The forest does not become dry. It becomes wet in a different way. The rain has stopped falling, but the water continues to move. It drips from leaf to leaf down through the canopy. It runs along the surfaces of branches and slides, bead by bead, to the tip, and then drops. The moss releases the water it has been holding, very slowly. For some time after rain, the sound of dripping is indistinguishable from the sound of continuing rain. Only by watching a specific point can you tell whether the rain has actually stopped. This quality, the forest's capacity to extend the rain beyond its own duration, means that on Yakushima, rain is never fully over. The forest holds it and releases it on its own schedule, independent of the sky. The trees do not wait for rain. They have organized their lives around the assumption of its permanent presence. At night, the Yakushima forest does not go silent. The deer continue their unhurried movement through the undergrowth. The macaques sleep high in the cedars, but they call out occasionally, and the calls carry far in the night air. The sound of the rivers persists. The insects, many species, each with its own night sound, create a layered background that varies by elevation and season. If it is raining, and it often is, the rain sound layers over all of this. The moss and bark that were dry, or partially dry, absorb the new water and swell slightly, The temperature drops. The cloud layer descends. In the darkness, the old cedars stand exactly as they have stood through every night of their thousands of years. They require nothing from the darkness. They are patient in a way that living things rarely manage. Patient because they do not experience time as duration, but simply as the condition in which they exist. Coast. The coastline of Yakushima is not the smooth tropical shore the name might suggest. The rock is ancient and jagged, shaped by the same volcanic and tectonic forces that built the mountains above. Tide pools dot the exposed reef shelves. In them, sea urchins, small crabs, fish that dart into crevices when a shadow passes. The line between the island's interior and the sea is not gradual. The forest comes almost to the water's edge, and then abruptly, the stone takes over, and the trees stop. In places, the cedar roots extend down the cliff face toward the salt water, as though the forest is testing the boundary, finding out where the sea begins. The fishing communities on the coast have coexisted with this boundary for generations. They understand which rocks hold urchins in which season, which channels run the best currents, when the water is warm enough, and when it is not. The coast is a different knowledge than the forest, but it is the same island. South Yakushima was not always isolated. For centuries it sat on the sea routes between the Japanese mainland and the Ryukyu kingdom, and before that, between coastal communities that predate written record. The island's harbours sheltered boats moving timber, dried fish, and goods in both directions. The Yakusugi cedar was valued precisely because it never rotted. Its density of resin made it almost immune to water damage, ideal for ships and temple construction. Yakushima's forests were, for a long time, the raw material of an archipelago. The trade routes brought things back as well. Techniques, tools, varieties of rice that grew better in the island's particular climate. The island was shaped by what passed through it. The villages on the southern coast still carry traces of the Ryukyuan exchange in their dialect, and in certain building styles that you do not find on the Japanese mainland. The sea routes are gone. The traces remain. Japan. The ferry back to Kagoshima departs in the morning, before the island is fully awake. The harbour is quiet. A few trucks deliver supplies that arrived overnight. The mountains behind the town are already hidden in cloud, as they almost always are. You board, and the island recedes. The coastline you last saw in the dark becomes a green silhouette, and then a shape, and then a line, and then nothing. The ordinary sea in every direction. The crossing takes 4 hours. People sleep. The sea between Yakushima and Kagoshima is sometimes rough. The island sits in the path of weather systems coming up from the south, and the channel can be turbulent even on days when the sky looks clear. You notice the mainland before you arrive at it. The buildings accumulate on the horizon. The harbour at Kagoshima is surrounded by the city. The transition is immediate, from island time back into the mainland pace, which does not wait. Island Yakushima is the kind of place that takes a while to arrive in, even after you have left. You find yourself thinking about the moss, the way it covered not just the ground, but everything. The fallen logs, the boulders, the lower trunks of the cedars, as if the forest were slowly, patiently erasing the distinction between one thing and another. The island does not offer itself quickly. It requires time. The people who know it best are the ones who came back. There is a particular quality of attention that Yakushima seems to cultivate, a slowing, a willingness to stay with one thing rather than move to the next. The hikers who spend a week there instead of 2 days come back talking about it differently. Not about what they saw, but about how they were while seeing it. The island does not take credit for this. It simply continues to be what it is and waits for visitors to adjust. Silent Jomansugi has stood through the entire span of written Japanese history and much that preceded it. It was old when the first Buddhist temples were built. It was ancient when the first warlords fought for the islands. It has witnessed nothing. It does not witness. It grows. But its persistence is itself a kind of record. A record of rain, of the particular chemistry of this granite, of the fact that some things, when left alone long enough, become something without a useful comparison. What Jomansugi offers is not wisdom. Trees do not offer wisdom. What it offers is scale. A sudden, physical sense of how brief the span of a human life is against the span of a living thing that simply kept growing while everything else happened. People stand before it and go quiet, not because they have understood something, because for a moment, the part of them that measures and compares has nothing left to do. At the edge of the island, where the forest meets the sea, the rain falls without moss to receive it. It hits the exposed granite of the shoreline and runs immediately to the water. The sea around Yakushima is dark at night, the island rising black and massive behind the narrow strip of coast. The fishing boats in the harbour ride quietly on the water. The lights of Miyanoura reflect in the harbour surface in long, wavering lines. The forest above the town is invisible in the darkness, but present. Its sound, when the wind shifts, reaches the shore. The smell of wet cedar and wet stone comes down from the mountains on the same wind. The island breathes. The lanterns are lit. The water runs continuously from mountain to sea, as it has run for longer than anyone can remember or imagine. Sleep well.